welcome. This is Eric Esposito, who's a triathlete and Ironman, and you got a great story, man. We're gonna dive back into it. You are a triathlete. You've competed in a lot of these events. You're also a traumatic brain injury survivor, and that's kind of been your calling lately, of sharing your story about that. So I just wanted to talk to you about how you got into being an athlete in the first place. Did you start off being a triathlete, or what led you into that?
I mean, I grew up being a swimmer. I started off doing every single sport under the sun because I'm ADHD and my mom's like, I got to do something with this kid. I don't know what, but I'm going to play him in every sport possible. And eventually they would weed themselves out to where I would just do swimming and then play a little bit of tennis because that's what I had in like a month in my off season. So I got to be pretty good at swimming. I didn't go on to swim in college because I wanted to do that big college experience. And I tried to walk on there, but I mean, I could have gone on at a D2 or like lower, like D1 school. But I wanted to go to Pitt, have a good time, and I ended up playing water polo for them. So they converted me, which was a lot more fun. Instead of looking at a black line, I'm actually, there's some physicality to it. I'm like, yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
However, that wouldn't last because Pitt is out of state. I was from Ohio, going to Pennsylvania, and my grades were not that good because I just didn't adjust well to college at first. I had a relatively easy time in high school, and that's not how college was. I didn't really know how to study because I didn't have to. It just came easily. And then I got, my butt kicked a lot, and I came back in state. I didn't swim. I didn't do much, and I was doing architecture school, so I didn't have time to do much. Fast forward past undergrad, I would come out to Georgia Tech to do my master's degree. And while I was there, I was lifeguarding because as a swimmer, you tend to pick up lifeguarding jobs easily. It's just part of the background.
Yeah.
So I was there, and one day the Atlanta Rainbow Trouts, like, we need a coach. I'm like, that's great. I need to get hours. And for my intern development progress, it's called IDP, in order to get your registration for architecture. At that time, you needed volunteer hours, and my one professor told me, yeah, coaching a sport, qualifies. Like, all right. So I got my 60 hours, and I just stayed on, and, they paid me a little bit of money. I'm like, all right, that's cool. It was beer money at the time,
Yeah.
So I did that till like 2014 or 2015. And no, it was maybe 15 or 16. Anyway, during that time, there were triathletes on the team. And for about 2 years, they badgered me into doing a triathlon. I would just tell them no. And finally, I said, I'll do one if it'll shut you up. I said, now get back in the pool and finish the workout. So I'd agreed to it, and it was like July. And that's pretty, late in the season to sign up for anything that, they only gave me a couple of options. And I didn't want to do a sprint triathlon for my first one, but I was also smart enough not to do an Ironman. I'm like, I'll do an Olympic. Well, where's an Olympic nearby that I could do? The only time in the region, place in the region that was able for me to race that late in the season and, prepare for it, it was in the middle of October in Tallahassee, Florida. Try the res. I'm like, okay. I didn't have too bad of a time. It was it was a hot day in Tallahassee. And if you know anything about the Redneck Riviera, when it's hot, it's disgusting.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was my first experience. And, from that point, I was hooked. And I knew I wanted to come back for more and do longer events. So
what's the difference? I know you explained it to us last time. There's a few different distances and a few different categories. So you have the sprint triathlon, then there's the Olympic, then there's a half Ironman and a full Ironman. Will you break those down for us?
Yeah, okay. The Ironman's the one that you don't do for your first triathlon.
Yes.
You never go out. I always recommend going to the shorter end of the sprint first because it gets your feet wet, it's short, and you learn how to do a triathlon. You learn so much in your first race that doing an Ironman for your first race is a really bad idea. If you want to do it in your second race, by all means, knock yourself out, but get one under your belt. So an Ironman is 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and 26.2-mile run. And it makes for a long day. Mine was about 11 hours is my best, but you get 17 hours to do it, and anybody can do an Ironman. It is not that hard, and you know, with the 17-hour pace, you can walk a marathon. 2 miles per hour is rough walking speed, brisk, right? Well, you could do that in 6.5 hours and walk the marathon. You could ride 13 miles per hour roughly on the bike for 112 miles. Swim, if you're not a good swimmer, just pick a race with a river. You'll beat the cutoff. At Ironman Chattanooga, the inaugural year, 2 weeks before the race, they pulled the dead body from the river, and they said that the current was so fast at that time that even the dead body floating downriver would have beat the cutoff.
Literally. Wow.
So Ironman is like the top level of the endurance thing. You have a few things that are higher than that. Like they have like ultra Ironmans and stuff, but there's only like 2 or 3 of those out there, or they're in stage races, and they're not my cup of tea, and I would never do one. Ironman's a long day. I don't want to draw this thing out over 3 days.
Yeah.
So obviously half Ironman is half of that. It's known as a 70.3, 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike, and 13.1 mile run. That's kind of my favorite distance. I just have grown to like that. The training load required to go in to do one of those is very manageable on anybody's schedule, even if you've got like 4 kids, an executive level job. It's, you could do a 70.3 and do all right. The Ironman is such a huge time commitment that's why I kind of pushed more towards 70.3s. An Olympic is, in metric terms, 1,500 meter swim, 40 kilometer bike, and a 10K run, which is roughly a mile swim, 25-mile bike, and a 6.2 mile run.
Okay.
So, if you want to do that for your first one, knock yourself out. There's a little bit more work involved, but like I said, if anybody really wants to try a triathlon, try a sprint. That's half of an Olympic, which is 750-meter swim, about a 12-mile bike, and run a 5K. It's a nice, easy day. It's doable for anybody. You can do couch to that in a couple of months.
Yeah.
You won't be fast, but you could do it.
You can finish, yeah.
Like I said, doing a triathlon nobody should think of it as this daunting task that is impossible. It's entirely possible for anybody. Even a 400-pound guy could do one. It's just, how fast do you think you can go? You might not do it very fast, but anybody can finish within the time limits as long as they put the training in. Sure.
Yeah, training's key, especially for training for 3 different, bike, swim, and run. It's, you definitely got to train for those. Especially, how did you do converting from being a swimmer and then hopping on a bike and then running? You found that you kind of fell into the groove pretty easy as far as athletic wise?
Yeah, it hasn't been a problem. I actually enjoy the bike the most. Swimming,
I think a lot of athletes favor the bike. A lot of guys I follow, they're like really into the bikes.
Yeah, I loathe swimming. I burnt out of it. When you do it for the age of 4 to 18, and you're doing it roughly 11 months out of the year, you burn out. And when you burn out of swimming, you burn out hard. Yeah. So that's why I just do the bare minimum to, I have, we'll call it residual talent for lack of a better word. I can bank on the skills that I have built up over a lifetime to get me through at a relatively quick pace. And it's faster than most people. At an Ironman, I'll finish within the top 5% in the swim and, without breaking a sweat. And I don't need to be any more faster than that. It's like there's a saying in triathlon that you can't win it in the swim, but you can lose it in the swim. So I don't blow my load in the swim. I'm worried about the bike and the run.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems doable that way.
Yeah.
So you got back in. So 2015, you did your first one. You were hooked, and then you
14 I did it in 2014, and 2015 was the year where I jumped up in distance. I went to the 70.3, and then I did an Ironman distance. It wasn't an Ironman brand, but it was an Ironman distance.
Sure. How was that? Was that a struggle doing the full Monty?
No, because all winter I had worked out. I didn't really take an off season. I just kept going into it. And originally, now being so new to the sport, I didn't know how many races you could do in a year. I just didn't know what my body could take because I was new to it. So I only signed up for a beach to battleship in October, and I had a couple of the friends on the Atlanta Rainbow Trout approach me, like, "Hey, Chattanooga's coming out with a 70.3 this year. You want to do it with us?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, I'll do it." And that was in May, and I didn't have a good day that day. I got two flat tires, and I lost like about an hour or so time waiting for the bike support because you only carry one spare tire.
Yeah.
There were no good Samaritans on the course that lent me a tube. My friend who said, one of the friends who asked me to join him, he's like, "Yeah, I gave my tube out to someone." Like, why couldn't that someone been me, man?
Sure. Yeah.
So I didn't have a good day that day, but I knew I was in good enough shape to do some more races that year. And I'm like, why don't I do an Ironman thing? So I found it was Rev 3, but that year the Challenge ran the race. It was Challenge Cedar Point. I'm from Ohio. This is, I could gather up, a little bit of a support crew to come up there. Plus, they had this neat thing where, your guest could go ride the rides for free while you were racing, which Cedar Point is known as the roller coaster capital of the world. It's got the best roller coasters. So they got to go for free on an off-season day with no lines. I would have much rather done that than actually ran the race.
That's easy to get somebody to help when you can offer that as compensation. Like, oh, just go have fun.
Yeah, I'm on the bike for about 5.5 hours or so, and they're riding rides. And eventually, you usually spend a whole day at an amusement park, but you get sick of it having no lines. You're like, all right, I think I've ridden 20 times on the Magnum. That's all I need for the day.
Yeah.
It lost its appeal. So, all right, it was, it wasn't bad. Yeah, it was funny. I was still really good at swimming, and I came out of the water right behind the guy who was going to win. I was just a couple of seconds behind him, and the swim was moved because a storm had come through the night before, and while they were laying out the course, the swells capsized the boat. They're like, we're moving it to the marina. Well, that just meant transition was further away now, so it was roughly a mile run on asphalt barefoot.
Ooh.
Yeah, it wasn't fun, but I came out of the water right behind him. I mean, I was a couple of seconds behind. We got into transition, and I came out first. And it was like a deer in the headlights moment where I said to the cop, I'm like, what do I do? He's like, follow that guy. And I've never been first in a triathlon before, or at least a major one like that. And I haven't since, but it was like, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, so I was ahead for about 8 miles before the guy caught me because he had a slow transition. But, I ended up getting DQ'd that race because one of the cops doing traffic support sent me the wrong direction. It sucked. It sucked. But, and I knew I shorted the course when he did it because I came out and I'm like, I asked the guy at the aid station, I'm like, hey, where am I at? He's like, you're first. I'm like, shit. I shorted the course. So, but I still finished up the race. I just didn't stop there and go head in. I paid for it. I didn't do 112 miles on the bike. I only did like 95. But, I couldn't say I did an Ironman that day, but I did the race. So,
yeah. Can you get away with not having a support team on those things, or can you need somebody to help?
Well, no, in an Ironman race, they're not allowed to actually hand you anything. So they're just there more like,
cheering
support as in cheering you on.
Oh, okay.
It's not like a marathon where I can hand you stuff and it's perfectly fine. Like, my ex-fiance, I used to be carrying, I was her mule. I would hand her gels. I'd refill her water bottles because she could never, she couldn't do two things at once. She could not eat and run or drink and run. So in order for her to keep going, I would fill up her stuff at the aid station and do like that. Well, you can't do that in Ironman. It's against the rules. You have to be self-sufficient and carry your own stuff.
So you just leave like drop bags at the beginning, and they'll place them at the transitions, at the different places where you transition.
No, you set up your transitions. In an Ironman, there's a special needs bag for the run and the bike, and they're roughly at the halfway markers.
Oh, okay.
I never put anything in there because I kind of plan to be self-sufficient. I think the only thing I ever use on the bike special needs, I just call it gooch cream. It's like, you're on your saddle for 112 miles, and there's creams like butter or Body Glide that kind of lubricate it so you don't get saddle sores.
Sure.
So I would always put like a one-off sample size in the bag, and this way, whatever you leave in the special needs bag, you don't get back. That gets donated or thrown away. So you have to plan on like not getting anything back, whatever you leave or take out.
Gotcha.
So that's why I kind of plan to be self-sufficient, and not that you lose a little bit of time waiting to get your stuff out.
Sure.
Yeah, out of all the races that you did, what was like your favorite course or like location?
It's
Do you prefer
my favorite,
like the hill country, or do you like the flat?
No, so every race has something unique to offer. And for the most part, you're never going to get an Ironman in a big city or a half Ironman. Because you have to get all these permits and everything, there's somewhat of a remoteness to it. The biggest city I've ever raced in was Chattanooga, and that's by far, I've done the Ironman there, the half Ironman, the Waterfront Olympic. I did the 4.5 mile open water swim. There's been a couple of other ones I've done.
Are they all at the same locations or scattered throughout the city of Chattanooga?
They're not really scattered. They use the same basic principle. Like the course is a little bit different between the Ironman and the 70.3, and the Waterfront is different, but everything takes place in the city. Yeah. I mean, I just love that city. Our favorite two places to race in were Panama City for Gulf Coast and the marathon, and Chattanooga. I've loved a lot of other places, but I'm not a person who likes to do races multiple times in cities, but I like going back to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
It just kind of holds a special place. It's a fun place, and the city really gets behind their races. It doesn't matter what they do.
That's fun. That's fun to have the community out there kind of cheering you guys and just kind of having that positive vibe.
Yeah, I would go up to visit Chattanooga when there wasn't a race. It's a great place to visit and to tour. I don't know if I could ever live there because I live in Atlanta. I kind of need a lot of stuff going on to keep me occupied.
Sure.
But it's one of those places that I always enjoy going.
Yeah, it's a cool little town. I'm from Knoxville, so it's a few hours north of there, but we went to Chattanooga for the Chattanooga Aquarium. So that was like the highlight of the trip. We go check out all the stuff in there. Yeah.
Everybody recognizes that building from the skyline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's popular.
Yeah, and Panama City is the other place that I always enjoy racing. I've never been a big beach person because I didn't grow up near a beach. I'm like, this sand, it gets everywhere. What am I supposed to do? But
I live 3 miles from the beach, and I haven't been to the beach in 10 years.
Because of that same problem.
Because of the same problem.
Sand everywhere. Yeah.
I prefer to go on the boat or do something like that.
Yeah. And, I just never had that beach experience. I didn't, go out to lakes that much. So, I'm like, all right, I don't drink anymore, but like, that was like the only thing I had on the beach was sit there, drink beers or margaritas. Like, all right, well, I guess I got a race tomorrow, so I'm going to take a nap here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that takes us up. So you did the 2015, you did the full one, you got DQ'd. Did you try to get into another one that length again?
So, yeah, I did. Well, the rest of that year I had beach to battleship like 5 weeks later, and then it was done. And that race was, that was my first like true good race. I put up a 5:06 in the half, and it's a pretty respectable time for, like my first, non-screwed up race. And let's see, it was really strange, right? Because it's one of these abnormal races that is a point-to-point race. And if, you do ultra, so you're familiar with point-to-point is. You don't start in the same place that you finish.
Sure.
So you start over on the Intracoastal over on Wrightsville Beach. And transition 1 is a soccer field, a community soccer field over on the beach. So you swim from down the Intracoastal and you come up this ladder, right? And then you change there. Well, out in the morning, October is a crapshoot for triathlon weather. It can be warm, it can be nice, or it could be freezing. And that day, it was freezing.
Oh.
And I went, I set up my stuff in transition one, and I hopped on the electric bus to go to the start because you can't walk there. And the electric bus dies. The battery dies on it. So we're sitting there for like half an hour. I'm like, please don't let this be how my day's going to go. Luckily, it turned out pretty well. It was, I like the point-to-point thing. It's really fun when you're coming off the bike and somebody just takes your bike and you go get changed, Yeah, it's always fun doing that. It makes you feel kind of like a pro where somebody takes your stuff from you. Like, all right.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was a good experience. But then I would do another Ironman the following year. I raced a lot more that year. I did 4 70.3s, a few half marathons, a marathon, and I did an Ironman. But the Ironman was in Maryland, and it's this backwoods town. In my race report, I said it's a down-and-out fishing town that Billy Joel would sing about. Like there's your hotel. You can't get a hotel within 45 minutes. Like the only thing to do there is eat, and it's like all these restaurants that serve crabs. And I went to one. The crab cakes weren't that good. It was disappointing. And so like it's in the Choptank River, which is it lives up to its name. If you go any earlier, they have these nettles, which are like jellyfish. So, we just beat the window for that, but the stormy conditions from the day before made it impossible to swim. I could have swam in it. Like I did at Lake Erie. It was 2 to 4 foot waves in Lake Erie when I was swimming. Wow. But Ironman doesn't want to take that risk. When they cancel a swim, they're canceling because they're thinking about the worst swimmer possible. It's that guy who barely makes the cutoff. You got to think about that guy, not about the guy who could do it in under an hour.
Sure.
So that was disappointing. Plus, again, I'm from Ohio. I don't know what tidal flooding is, and I found out that day. Every day at the time of the run, the city floods. And so my feet were soaked. I was lucky that I Vaselined them before then, but people are taking off their socks and shoes and running through the puddles. Like, no, bad. You're never going to get them back on.
Yeah, it's going to take too much time.
It's not even that, but you're never going to get socks back on. So you have to put on just shoes, and you're going to get blisters anyway. Don't take them off.
Yeah.
So that, it was a miserable day. And when I finished, I drove straight home. I finished at roughly 5 or 6 o'clock at night. I drove through the middle of the night to go home because I was so disappointed in having the swim canceled. I drove, like 12 hours. I stopped in D.C. to shower at a friend's house so I didn't smell like a bum's nutsack when I got home.
So they'll still do the other 2 legs of the triathlete, even though they cancel the swim?
Yeah, it doesn't make it a triathlon anymore, though.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting. I didn't know they did that. Okay.
Yeah, they'll do that. They've done it before where they've canceled the bike and stuff and kept the swim in the run. They're not going to give you your money back, though.
Yeah.
They will not give you your money back if they have to cancel a leg.
Sure.
And if you have the Ironman insurance, it doesn't cover acts of God, which that's what they consider. Ironman insurance only covers injury that's not self-inflicted, illness, or pregnancy. It doesn't cover much.
Sure. Yeah, so cold water or choppy water, you gotta just eat it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to race what's given to you. If they have to cancel stuff, you're still not getting your money back. It's just going to be, you have to make what you can of it out of the day.
So you're not going back to do that race again, I take it.
No. It's really the experience as a whole. I mean, I've never, there are very few races that I would tell people not to do. And I've done some really hole-in-the-wall races that, they're small independent races, but I still would tell people to do it at least once just for the experience because I like to go to different places to race. However, I would never recommend to anyone to do that race.
Yeah, sounds like it.
There's nothing to do there. There's nowhere to stay. The run course floods. You might not get a swim. If you get a swim, you might get stung by jellyfish. Sorry, I can't put my seal of approval on it.
There's got to be plenty of other places to go.
And like on the bike, there's swirling winds. You're going through this wildlife refuge, and part of a bike, of course, will flood too. But it's just you, the grassy marshes, and a couple of birds.
Yeah, it doesn't seem appealing.
Nah. But it's fast. It's flat.
Yeah. And what year was that? That was 2016?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then shortly after that's when the injury took place, right?
Yeah, that happened in the last race of my season where I did Ironman Chattanooga. That day I got all three sports. And that's when I realized that, I don't have to do any more of these Ironmans. I got it all. It wasn't a great race, but, they cancel a leg of your race. You can't call yourself an Ironman.
Right.
That's just the rules. Ironman is all three races.
Sure.
So, yeah, I had like an 11-hour race. It wasn't bad. My foot hurt during the run. But then 10 days after that, that week I had just went on my employer's health insurance. I'm like, well, new job. I could start bike commuting to work now. It's going to be like 30 miles extra for my, off-season load. That won't be bad. The second time I went, I got hit by an SUV head on going about 50 miles an hour.
Oh, man.
And,
head on, right? No, kind of head on.
Pretty close to it. He didn't have to hit his brakes at all.
Oh. Man, so what happened when you got hit? You got knocked unconscious, or?
Yeah, I was unconscious for about 2 minutes.
Man. They had to take you to the hospital, or you?
Yeah, Grady is the only level 1 trauma center in Atlanta, so they took me there.
Oh, man. And how long did it take to really diagnose any injuries or problems? They sent you home later that day?
Yeah, they sent me home later that day. The whole brain injury issue kind of developed over the next month or two. They didn't really have anything that initial day. They didn't even notice I broke a finger because it was a non-displaced fracture. So it was a whole bunch of nothing being there. They just loaded me up with pain meds. When you get hit by a car like that, you get that initial burst of pain that you could never describe, and you'll probably never feel like again. But after that, your adrenaline kicks in, so you don't feel anything. When they get you on in the ambulance, they load you up with some fentanyl. You still don't feel anything. After you've been in, they load you up a little bit more while you're in the hospital. They send you on your way with a bottle of Percocets. The first time you actually feel anything is about the next morning when your Percocets have worn off and you can't move and you can't get out of the bed. So that's the next moment where you actually feel pain again.
So what was that? Did you break any other bones? Just the finger, as far as your?
Just the finger, and it was either the ring or the middle finger. I don't remember. It was caused by the impact on it jammed my hand on the brake and the car.
I mean, I imagine your body felt like just awful the next day. But how did your head feel? Did you have the like bad headaches, like serious?
It was like having a fog. It was kind of like having a really big fog over me. That fog would last for a really long time. So, my mom is a nurse, and she's the one who had kept pushing me to get in with a neuropsychologist. Nobody else was, but my mom, been a nurse since '79. I really wish that she lived near me. She lives in Ohio. She can only do so much, and I had to do everything else on my own. I didn't have that person to rely on.
Sure. Well, luckily the insurance just kicked in a few days prior to this happening, huh?
Very lucky. Very lucky.
Oh man, it's tough.
Yeah, they insurance companies are not fun, and my employer, I love that job, but goddamn, Kaiser Permanente sucks. They are horrible. Ken Jeong makes a joke about how he was a Kaiser doctor, and he's like, "Yeah, we're as bad as you think you are." In his stand-up routine that came out last year, and it's like, yeah, it's like their doctors are bottom of the barrel.
Sure.
Med school did not send their brightest there.
Yeah, just the bottom.
Yeah.
So for something that happened, like for a traumatic brain injury like that, how did it lead up to, like, what's the next step that you went to? Do you go to like a neuroscientist and they're doing scans on your brains, checking all that, or is it more
No.
memory based? How you're acting, stuff like that.
I knew something was wrong too. Like, and I went to the neuropsychologist to get testing, and it's like a battery testing that takes all day long, and you I ended up scoring pretty bad on it, and they just said this is post concussion syndrome. Like, okay, they didn't agree that it was a TBI at the time, but they, based on what this is, and you're showing signs of depression. And I would go through depression, like severe depression, for a long time. But when I went back about a month and a half later, I scored just as bad. They're like, we still think it's post concussion like syndrome. It should get better in like a month.
And
Well, that's the
how
thing.
long after the accident is this? A couple months that you're getting the test done?
I did the test at the end of November and in the middle of January.
Yeah.
And they said, 3 to 6 months is as long as this should last. And it did. It went on. And, I would eventually get fired from that job because I was no longer a functional architect. If my boss ever hear this, you gave me a lot longer than I would have given myself. I worked for another 10 months for them, and I was wondering, like, when am I going to get fired? And they gave me a lot, more rope than I would have given myself if that was my employee. Yeah. So if you listen, thank you. I appreciate it. But, I couldn't do the job like a normal person could anymore. So I was off the health insurance, which meant I would be off the health insurance for like another 13 or 14 months, which meant I had to either pay out of pocket or just not get treated for it, which made me be in a really complicated situation because I really needed the treatment. And that's what sucks about, hopefully things will change in the near future, but without a universal healthcare system, if you end up like me, where you can no longer work because you got hit by a car, then how are you supposed to, if you're relying on your employer for your insurance and they just fired you, you're screwed. And I felt that, that's why I'm a big advocate for Medicare for all. Every other civilized country does it. Why can't we? I could have got better care much sooner than I did now. Like 2 years down the road is when we started to get, my insurance says, we need to get you in with the best people possible to see what we can do for you. It was, cost be damned, and we just did it that way.
And whatever happened with the guy that hit you, he didn't have, I don't know if his car insurance would cover an accident like that, but what happened with that side of it?
Basically he got, it's funny, right? If he would have killed me, they would have gave him manslaughter. If I was going to have been running and he hit me, it would have been assault. However, I'm a bicycle and I'm considered a vehicle. Oh, yeah. So all he got was a failure to yield. Okay. And his insurance company, I saw he had a $500 deductible. So he had to pay that, and he'll pay whatever his insurance and premiums are increased, plus a $200 fine. That's all he got. It's not justice, but
were you able to go after his insurance to try and cover some of your expenses, or it wasn't?
Yeah, that's still an ongoing thing. COVID has kind of prolonged that. I'm obviously 3+ years into that, but it's still an ongoing lawsuit.
That sucks, man. So during those 12, 14 months without any treatment, you weren't able to get any? I know you had mentioned that you went through the ketamine treatment, which I wanted to talk to you more about.
Well, I went through it twice. So ketamine is used for people with major depression that is resistant to antidepressants. My depression was really, really bad, and none of the medicines that were given me were working. In fact, the Wellbutrin gave me suicidal thoughts. So I had been researching the ketamine treatment for about 7 months before I did it. And, it just got so bad to where I'm like, I need to do this. And it's an IV treatment, 6 sessions. It's funny, like 6 months later, it ended up getting through the FDA approved. So you can do it with nasal sprays now. But yeah, I did 6 treatments. They're like $350 a treatment that are all out of pocket. So that's, like $2,100 or so, something like that.
Sure.
Over $2,000 for that out of pocket. And I did it twice.
Tell me how the sessions go. Do you benefit from the hallucination part of what you kind of go through, or the aftermath of coming down from it?
I mean, it's not. We'll call it the coming down from it. The ketamine works on the receptors that affect your brain that cause the depression, as the ketamine leaves your body. So you have to get high in order to have that part happen.
You hallucinate, or is it more just you're feeling good and high?
You hallucinate.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I wrote my book, I added both of those things into my book. About I would take notes, or I would turn on my phone for audio messages and just talk about things that I saw, stuff like that. And both experiences were actually very different. The first time around, I saw a lot of shapes and figures and nature scenes. The second time around, I had just went through a breakup with my fiance, and so a lot of the stuff were about her, our dogs, all that stuff, all my friends, and so it was kind of a lot more of an emotional experience that time.
Is the therapist guiding you through it, or is he just there just to like make sure everything's okay?
He leaves the room. He leaves you with a little bell that has a happy face on it.
Oh,
You press. That's it. Everything's on your own. And the way he has his office set up, he's got paintings on the wall, stuff like that. He's got little pin lights or different types of lights, and they really do make a difference in what you see.
sure, yeah, yeah. If it's dark or if it's light in the room, you're probably not going to see as much. But yeah, the visuals are definitely key.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people like drugs, because they work. But it was definitely an interesting experience. I mean, it was interesting experiences. Like I had done mushrooms before, like 10 or 12 times in college, and it's not quite the same. It's a little bit different. It's a different type of hallucination.
You said it kind of after the hour session, you kind of recover. It's not lingering around all day, right? You kind of just gets out and.
No, it's quick. I mean, I can operate a vehicle within 30 minutes of after the session.
Oh wow!
It takes an hour to go through the treatment.
And the second round you did, so that one was it this year when the last time you did it?
Yeah, January, February. Do that.
And you feel like after this time, I like how your explanation on one of your vlogs, you explain it as a snow globe being shaken up, and you feel kind of like everything's coming back down, right?
Yeah. So I mean, on the whole, when you get hit by a car like that and your brain gets rattled, it's like someone shook the snow globe, and you don't know how long it's going to take for all the snow to finally settle again. And guess what? When it does settle, it's not in the same place as where it was before you shook it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a metaphor for how your life can be afterwards. But, it does settle eventually. You just don't know when it's going to happen. I didn't expect to have to go through what I did with my relationship and how inactive she was and how much that had an effect on me. Like, I didn't actually start showing big improvements until it was over. And then I was getting the ketamine treatments. Yeah. And I started working with a really good counselor too. And I've been, with him since January 2019.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely helps. It definitely helps to find the right person to do that with, for sure.
Yeah.
So then I know you mentioned you were writing down some notes for your book through the treatments of the ketamine. And I remember you telling us the story of once you got the book basically done, it's not released yet, but it is written up. You posted it on Reddit, and that's kind of how all the traumatic brain injury vlog and kind of led down this path of that. Kind of explain what you did there.
So it wasn't done at the time. It was, I didn't know when the ending was going to be at that point in time. But in January, 2 days before Christmas, the ex had left me. And, I went on a week-long bender. And I wanted someone, I just needed people to know what I was going through. I needed empathy. I just needed people to know because, life, I had hit my rock bottom, and like, I just needed someone to know. So I put it out on Reddit. Hey, I need somebody to read this, and it was in the TBI subreddit, and I got a lot of responses. So I sent it out. It's not an easy read. It ended up being 372 pages that I have to condense.
Nice.
But it took a while for people to read, but they told me wonderful things, um, that I had vivid descriptions about what I went through, and that I could describe things that they had been going through and they just didn't know how. They're like, you have to push this to get published. You have to keep going with everything. And so, when COVID hit and I wasn't racing, that's when I picked up the YouTube channel and started doing the video logs. And then it's all the comments I got, and you know, the random direct messages I would get. Uh, they would be for anything. People asking for advice. People, it's like, okay, well, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not what I ever thought my life would be, but it's what my life was meant to be. So I kind of, I just embraced it and just kept pushing forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that, when a lot of people, like you're saying, you're putting stuff down in words of your experiences and how you're feeling. And sometimes it feels like maybe you're the only one going through that. But then when you share it and people are like, that's exactly how I feel, it really helps both sides. It helps you realize you're not alone in this. And it really helps the other people put it down like in words, like you're explaining it. It's great to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I felt alone for a very long time because the ex had checked out early on and she didn't want to deal with the TBI. So I just wanted other people to not feel like I felt, that there's somebody out there who's been through what you have been through. And, I always answer all my messages. So all those people who feel that way, we have a conversation about it.
Sure. I mean, in putting yourself out there like that, you're creating a community, people that can share ideas. And I know, tell me a little bit about, I know you're doing, with YouTube, with a lot of the channels, you're going to use, any of the proceeds that you're able to get from that to go towards the traumatic brain injury, like a GoFundMe page. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm good for one thing. I'm going to donate the ad revenue when I can, but like we're still in the process of getting monetized. They're vetting us right now for it. But I mean, with the GoFundMe, it's kind of raising money to. It's twofold because a lot of the stuff resources I use to put the channel together, I can also use to help my brain injury support group, like having the Zoom account. Well, because of COVID, we have to do everything remotely. So if I can donate the money or raise money for the GoFundMe for the channel, then I can also double it to use it for the brain injury support group. And I would like to donate the money from the ad revenue to them too, and help cover operating expenses. So,
how did you get connected with the support group? Was it through like a Facebook group, or was it through the Reddit emails, or you created your own? How did that work?
My neurologist told me the other day that because I'm such a high functioning individual, she's like, there's not a lot of support for people like you out there. You should really start a support group. I said, are you going to help me? She's like, I don't know if I have the time, but I'm like, okay, so it's on me to do this. Yeah. I said, so, I mean, I might start one eventually for, people who are very intelligent, like that have those kind of jobs that, a lot of TBI patients aren't. I got a master's degree from a Georgia Tech, which is a top 10 school in the country in architecture. And, I like to think, I'm slower now, but I'm still a smart individual. And there's people like me who are fairly intelligent that don't get a lot of answers from support groups like mine. It's been helpful. They've pushed me, to keep going with things. But eventually, maybe I'll take my doctor's offer up or suggestion and create a group like that and use the funding for it.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely possible. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can relate, whether it's through, having an injury through a traumatic brain injury or just having, just any type of memory loss or brain damage, I'm sure a lot of people would find it useful for sure.
Well, it's kind of I wrote a short story about this. As it started off as an example, it turns into a short story, but it's a lot like being released from prison when you're a high functioning individual when you suffer a TBI. You can't go back to your old life. The world has changed around you, and you can't do what you used to do anymore. You have to figure out this new world that you're in. You might have went away and like Shawshank's Redemption. There were not when Brooks came out, he didn't know what the hell a car was. He had never seen one before, right? The world changes around you, and you have to adapt to it because odds are you probably can't go back to your career. You could try, but it might. Like I tried, it didn't work out. So, when this came along, I just embraced it because I can't get a job at Walmart. Or a low-paying job. They don't want to hire me or interview me because I'm overeducated. Any better-paying jobs in other fields, they look at me and they think I'm a one-trick pony. I'm just an architect. So when this came along, I was like, "This is what we're gonna do. This is our we're gonna pursue this and we're gonna make something of it."
Well, that's good, man. So what about on the racing side? You gonna get back into that as well?
I mean, I did in 2018. It wasn't a particularly good season. I did three races. I did a marathon, which was ugly, and I did a half Ironman, which was also ugly, and the Olympic, which is even uglier. Like I had a lot of PTSD issues, and I was not comfortable being on a bike on the road again. Like the first time I'd been back on the road was in May when I raced Gulf Coast, and it's not a closed course. And they're riding on the highway there, and cars will fly by at like 65 miles an hour. It just scares the living shit out of you, especially when you're a little gun shy.
I bet, yeah.
Then I had one of my CO2 cartridges fall out of my out of my X nut on the back. It was ping, 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 ping. And I'm like losing it. Like, what just happened? I don't know what's going on with this bike, but you're really nervous. Like I said, it wasn't a particularly good experience. I didn't start really getting back into it till last year. And it kind of sucks that COVID happened because I was kind of trying to, build on that momentum that I had. But instead, I lost all momentum. I mean, I found other things to do with my time since I couldn't race. But I had built up a little bit of equity again, and I had lost that triathlon racing equity.
Sure. So what's your plan for 2021? You gonna get back out there, try and do a few races?
I mean, to be honest, 2021 is supposed to be what 2020 is. So all my races, except for 2, were deferred.
Wow, you're saying you have like 14 to do, right? You're gonna sign up for like
something like that. I signed up for like 17, I think. There were 2 that were funded, which I just told them to keep the money. Because the ones that runs foundations are the ones that gave me back my money. And I told them, I said, I'm not cashing your check. I mean, I'll take the money back from Ironman because I don't like their CEO. He was a dickhead to me one time. I'll take the money back from them. But, this little foundation who's putting on a race, just keep my money. Yeah. You might not be back next year.
Sure.
So, yeah, 14, 15 races, something like that. But it'll give me more to write about because, all the writing I did this year for my blog was all creative work.
Yeah.
And somewhat sports reporting, which is great. It let me expand my ability as a writer. But, that's really hard to do. I wrote 24 – I ended up writing 24 pieces for this year. I couldn't do that for another season without having any races. But, with this second wave of COVID, I don't know what's going to happen.
I know.
And I don't know how long it's going to last.
I know. Nobody knows. It's such weird times right now. You got to just take it like week by week almost.
Yeah, I would like to think a regime change in the White House might have an effect in whether we race or not next year. But, the thing is, even with a change of the guard, are they going to be able to corral this in time to give us a season,
Yeah, I know.
I realize some races have come back now, but you know, there's no telling to know if those were actually super spreader events. You know, we don't know. I just, there's so many unknowns about what's going on.
I know I have a race coming up in like 2 weeks, and I'm just praying nothing like escalates and they have to do another lockdown, because it's just going to be a bummer, man.
Yeah, you do ultras though, and yours is like kind of relies on remoteness and not a whole lot of closeness to other competitors.
Right.
So you might be able to get away with it.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
He's been training a long time for it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen, I'm just going to have to do it on my own somewhere. Just block off a track around town and just do it.
Don't run an ultra on a track. Dear God, you're going to kill yourself.
I know. Well, the one that I'm doing now, it's just like a 0.8 mile loop. So it's just loop, and do that for 6 days. So that's going to be intense.
I don't know, man. That's I have to run routes that the scenery is always changing, you know.
Well, that's why I did this race last year. I did the 24-hour version, but I enjoyed the nighttime because it almost kind of doles out all your scenic, so you're not, you kind of almost can close your eyes because you ran it so many loops. I mean, you just kind of know the feeling. So I did enjoy nighttime because you're not seeing the same like squirrel in the tree or the bird chirping like every lap. So
I'll tell you what, if you want to come up here and run it, the Vinings Polo Fields, it's where, the horse, mallet, ball, smack it between the posts. Vinings Polo Fields for the Atlanta region are a couple miles from my house. And they have the fields plus the dirt track. And the figure 8 loop is exactly 1 mile.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's the only place where I can run repetitive loops like that and not be bored. I did a half marathon on there one day. And, you get people down there playing with their dogs and stuff. It's great. I love running down there.
Yeah.
You used to take my dog down there.
Yeah, it can get a little boring after a while, for sure, saying the same thing.
Plus, it's the soft stuff, The soft stuff is nice.
Yeah, we're doing it on the road, which is definitely bang up your hips and knees a lot more, for sure.
Yeah.
Gonna feel it.
I can see that.
Well, Eric, I appreciate it, man, and I do want to post your GoFundMe information, your social media information. Where can people find you on Instagram, on Facebook?
I am Espo Swim Bike Run, ESPO. Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. My website is www.esposwimbikerun.com for swim, bike, run, triathlon, or just creative stuff. That's just where I put everything.
Cool. Yeah, and then send me over the GoFundMe link. I'll post that in all the show notes for this show as well. We'll try to get
man.
For you.
Great. Good luck with your ultra.
Yeah, man. I'll be posting the live link. So just think when you wake up Monday, and then when you wake up Sunday, like, damn, that guy is still running. Just think about
Forrest Gump.
What's your nutrition plan? What are you gonna do?
Man, that's a whole nother journey, right? Because it's the physical part's one thing, but then trying to dial in nutrition and hydration. So what I have where I don't have like a lot of gut issues is really just sticking with whole foods. Steak, rice, potatoes, some soups. But, that's hard to shove down as I'm running, too. So, like, snacking, I've been doing, applesauce. I've been doing raisins. They have these I found these called the GFB snacks. They're these little peanut butter balls, with the almonds and some chocolate in it. So those are, like, the snack portion. But you know how it is. When you get into these races, my experience with them, you get half the day in and you don't feel like anything you packed in your bag. You're like, I just want, like, some Kentucky Fried Chicken or,
I once saw a guy do an Ironman and he was eating a foot-long sub.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to feel like out there.
Great Subway commercial.
Yeah. Well, it's better than the old one, right?
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to try and stick with that. I'm not really big on the gels and stuff like that. I'll get those if I need be. But, I know the Iron Cowboy, he has some electrolyte drink. I kind of felt like that it's been sitting good with my stomach. I hired him and his pacer Aaron to train me for the event. So I've been working with them with the physical side of running. But he's got some good electrolyte drink, and I've been mixing it with essential amino acids, and that's really taken away any chance of like cramping or any kind of discomfort. So I'm gonna bank on that. I just don't know how my body's gonna react after 6 days of doing that.
Well, hey man, only advice I got to give you is get in an ice bath. Go buy a bag of ice from your grocery store, throw it in there, wait till it melts enough, and sit in it for 10 minutes.
Yeah, we got a 240 quart cooler that he's gonna sit in.
Yeah, I got it. We just got it all kind of planned out. I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna try to have guys come throughout the week to reload the ice and try to do it. It's gonna be cold as shit, but it's gonna be needed.
We got one of the angle coolers that'll hold ice for 7 days. So
just throw some beers in there with you, man.
Yeah.
I used to sit there with a few beers just floating around, pick one up.
Yeah, just enjoy it.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me on, guys.
all right,
Yeah,
thank
Eric,
you.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
You too.